Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we conclude with Part 4, The Meaning of Masonry by Albert Pike. One of the earliest lessons taught the Masonic Initiate is that every Masonic temple, itself a symbol of the universe and of the soul of every upright and worthy man, is supported by three great columns: wisdom, strength, and beauty or harmony. The inmost meanings of these three columns I am not at liberty to make known here. They involve the highest truths of philosophy and the profoundest mysteries of nature. When the Mason is advanced, however, to a certain point, he learns that these three pillars of the old temple are replaced with three others, the names of which are familiar to you all: faith, hope, and charity, virtues which every Mason and every man and woman ought to possess. Faith in God, that He is good and wise and merciful, a Father and not a tyrant, whom we are as children to love and not as slaves to fear. In human nature, confidence in our kind, in the honesty of men's purposes and intentions, in man's capability for improvement and advancement. The same faith in others that we would have them put in us. And faith in ourselves, in our power to do some good and exert some influence upon our fellows. Faith that if we are but earnest, honest, and sincere, we can help destroy ignorance, error, and wrong, and become immortal in our good influences, living after we are dead. That noble and modest confidence in ourselves which is the secret of all success and the parent of all great and noble actions. Hope in the ultimate annihilation of evil in the universe, in the final triumph of Masonry that shall make of all men one family and household, in the cessation of war and bloodshed, and the advent of peace and liberty, in the final enfranchisement of the human soul and intellect in every country on the globe, and in a hereafter where man immortal shall be happy. And charity, taught us by faith and hope for those who differ with us in opinion, for them and for their faith and even for their errors. The charity which relieves the necessities and distresses of men, and with open hand gives the suffering and destitute solace and comfort, and which forgives and utters merciful judgment upon the faults and shortcomings of others, believes them better than they seem, and teaches us to judge and do unto others as we should wish them, and think it right for them to judge and do unto us. To be trustful, to be hopeful, to be indulgent, these, when all around us, are selfishness, despondency, ill opinion of human nature, and harsh and bitter judgment, are the true supports of every Masonic temple, and the bases of every manly and heroic nature. And they are also the old pillars of the temple under different names. For he only is wise who judges others charitably and deals with their errors mercifully. He only is strong who is hopeful, and there is no beauty of proportion or harmony like a firm faith in God, our fellows, and ourselves. Our lectures say to us, the true Mason labors for the benefit of those that are to come after him, and for the advancement and improvement of his race. That is a poor ambition which contents itself within the limits of a single life. All men who deserve to live at all desire to survive their own funerals and to live afterwards in the good that they have done mankind, rather than in the writing that lasts even the longest upon the sands of human memories. Most men desire to leave some work behind them that may outlive their day and brief generation. That is an instinctive impulse given by God and often found in the rudest human heart. The surest proof of the soul's immortality and of the radical difference between man and the wisest brutes. To plant the trees that after we are dead shall shelter our children is as natural as to love the shade of those our fathers planted. In his influences that survive him, man becomes immortal before the general resurrection. The thoughts of the past are the laws of the present and future. That which we say and do, if its effects last not beyond our lives, is of slight importance. That which shall live when we are dead, as part of the great body of law enacted by the dead, is the only act worth doing, the only thought worth uttering. The desire to do something that shall benefit the world, when neither praise nor obloquy will reach us where we sleep soundly in the grave, is the noblest ambition entertained by man. To sow that others may reap, to work and plant for those that are to occupy the earth when we are dead, to project our good influences far into the future and to live beyond our time, to rule as the kings of thought over men who are yet unborn, to bless with the glorious gifts of truth and light and liberty those who may never know the name of the giver nor care in what grave his unregarded ashes repose, is the true office of a Mason and the proudest destiny of a man. We read in Masonic monitors of speculative masonry as distinguished from operative masonry. I confess I shall be glad to see it disused. It always seems to me to involve the idea of talking much and doing nothing. Masonry is not speculative but operative. It is work. Good masonry is to do the work of life. Its natural work is practical life. Its precepts are meant for practical use. It was not meant for the lazy and luxurious, the indifferent or selfish, to long for the regeneration of the human race and entertain a philanthropy that embraces the whole. World is very pleasant and very easy. The difficulty is that when masonry is no more than that, the field to be cultivated is so extensive that no other crop is raised in any corner of it than weeds. It is a laudable ambition to wish to be the benefactor of the world, or at the least of a nation, but most men can expect to be so only through the influences they can exert within their own limited circle, and it would be too much to expect your grand philanthropist with universal humanity for his client to occupy himself with the pitiful interests of his own neighborhood and with the eradication of the evils that grow like poisonous rank weeds around his own door. The true Mason, on the contrary, occupies himself with what is near at hand. Right there he finds enough to do. His Masonry is to live a true, honorable, upright, affectionate life from the motive of a good man. He finds evils enough near him and around him to be corrected. Evils in trade, evils in social life, neighborhood abuses, wrongs swarming everywhere, to be righted, follies cackling everywhere, to be annihilated. Masonry, it has been well said, cannot in our age forsake the broad way of life. She must walk in the open street, appear in the crowded square, and teach men by her deeds, her life, more eloquent than any lips. The order says in its charge to those who are to preside over its lodges, "You are not to allow any assembly of the body over which you may preside to close, without recalling to the minds of the brethren the duties of a Mason. That is an imperative duty. Forget not that more than 3,000 years ago Zoroaster said, 'Be good, be kind, be humane and charitable, love your fellows, console the afflicted, pardon those who have done you wrong,' nor that more than 2,300 years ago, Confucius repeated, also quoting the words of those who had lived before himself, 'Love thy neighbor as thyself. Do not to others what thou wouldst not wish should be done to thyself. Forgive injuries, forgive your enemy, be reconciled to him. Give him assistance, invoke God in his behalf.' Let not the morality of your lodge be inferior to that of the Persian or the Chinese philosopher. Urge upon your brethren the teaching and the unostentatious practice of the morality of the lodge without regard to times, places, religions, or peoples. Urge them to love one another, to be devoted to one another, to be faithful to the country, the government, and the laws. For to serve the country is to pay a dear and sacred debt, to respect all forms of worship, to tolerate all political and religious opinions, not to blame and still less to condemn the religion of others, not to seek to make converts, but to be content if they have the religion of Socrates, a veneration for the Creator, the religion of good works, and grateful acknowledgement of God's blessings. To fraternize with all men, to assist all who are unfortunate, and cheerfully to postpone their own interests to those of the order. To make it the constant rule of their lives, to think well, to speak well, and to act well. To place the sage above the soldier, the noble or the prince, and take the wise and good as their models. To see that their professions and practice, their teachings and conduct do always agree. To make this also their motto, do that which thou oughtest to do, let the result be what it will. While Masonry inculcates these duties towards individuals, it also requires its initiates to work actively and earnestly for the benefit of their country. It is the patron of the oppressed, as it is the comforter and consoler of the wretched and unfortunate. It seems to it a worthier honor to be the instrument of advancement and reform than to enjoy all that rank and office and lofty titles can bestow. It is the advocate of the common people in those things which concern the best interests of mankind. It hates insolent power and impudent usurpation. It pities the poor, the sorrowing, the disconsolate. It would fain raise and improve the ignorant, the sunken, and the degraded. It is the preacher of liberty, fraternity, and equality, of a decent and well-regulated liberty, based on law and guarded by an inviolable constitution, under which the rights of the individual and the minority are as secure as those of the majority. Of liberty, that is not license, nor anarchy, nor licentiousness, nor the despotism of party, and by which men are free, but not too free, of fraternity in that sober sense which regards men as the children of a common Father, to be loved when good, pitied, and not hated when bad, persuaded and not persecuted when in error, of equality in the eye of the law, in political rights and in the rights of conscience. But it is not its mission to engage in plots and conspiracies against the civil government. It is not the fanatical propagandist of any creed or theory, nor does it proclaim itself the general enemy of kings. It contracts no entangling alliances with any sect of theorists, dreamers, or political philosophers. It sits apart from all in its own calm dignity and simplicity, the same in a republic as under a monarch, the same in Turkey as at the Rock of Plymouth, the same now as when the foundations of the first temple at Jerusalem were laid. It recognizes the truth of the proposition that necessity as well as abstract ideal right and justice plays a part in the making of laws, the administration of government and the regulation of relations in society, and rules in all the affairs of men. It knows that freedom follows fitness for freedom, as the consequence follows the cause, and that no people will be really free until they are fit to govern themselves. Therefore, it does not preach sedition nor encourage rebellion by a people or a race, when it can only end in disaster and defeat, or, if successful, in bloodshed and barbarism, and at last a worse servitude than before. But wherever a people is fitted to be free and generously strives to become so, there go all its sympathies. It hates and detests the tyrant and the lawless oppressor and him who abuses a lawful power. It frowns upon cruelty and a wanton disregard of the rights of humanity, and it is the enemy of the despotism of mob and autocrat alike. It is the votary of liberty and justice. Life's length, it tells its initiates, is not measured by its hours and days, but by that which we have done therein for our country and our kind. An useless life is short if it last a century, but that of Alexander was long as the life of Oakes, though he died at 35. If we but eat and drink and sleep, and let everything go on around us as it pleases, or if we live but to amass wealth or gain offices or wear titles, we might as well not have lived at all. In all times, humanity has had three chief enemies: the despotism of royal power, claiming to rule by divine right; the insolence, cruelty, and bloodthirstiness of the sacerdotal power, armed with the rack, the stake, and the gibbet; and the haughty pretensions of rank, caste, and privilege, fenced about with exclusiveness, and indignant when truth and right have seemed about to interfere with and diminish their vested rights by elevating the people to the dignity of manhood. These three have always been the implacable enemies of human liberty, and for many centuries the people gained ground only when pontiffs brought kings to their knees, or the throne had made against the insolent domineering of God's vicars, when the king ostracized and decimated his haughty nobles, or the nobles made concessions to the citizens and people to enlist them against the crown. Masonry was made to be the order of the people. It has ever exerted its influence on the side of civil and religious liberty, of emancipation of both the muscles and the mind of all that were fit to be free, of education and enlightenment, of the elevation of the oppressed masses of humanity to that level of equality on which they ought to stand. Opposition to regal tyranny made the government of Masonry democratic. Hatred of sacerdotal usurpation and intolerance dedicated its lodges to the Saints John, opened its doors to men of all creeds, and closed them against sectarian discussions. And its adoption of a founder and worker in metals, the son of a poor Phoenician widow, as the hero of its legend, evidences its hostility to the unjust privileges of oligarchies and aristocracies, and to orders that by means of monopolies that weigh heavily on the shoulders of the people, live in luxurious and arrogant idleness. It desires to see despotism everywhere dethroned and constitutional government established in its place, the sacerdotal power of all churches become like that which the apostles exercised in the first days of Christianity, the ways to rank and civil employment, to office and honors, open to all whose merits and capacity entitle them to aspire. And therefore this now is, as it always was, its motto: devotion to the interests of the people, detestation of tyranny, sacred regard for the rights of free thought, free speech, and free conscience, implacable hostility to intolerance, bigotry, arrogance, and usurpation, respect and regard for labor which makes human nature noble, and scorn and contempt for all monopolies that minister to insolent and pampered luxury. Brother, the Count de Fernig, said in the Central Grand Lodge of the Scottish Rite in France in 1848, "Man, frail and feeble, should be upheld by Scottish Masonry. It should elevate him without changing his proper nature or allowing him to become corrupted. It repudiates the dogma that commands the death of the senses, as it rejects the philosophy that exalts sensualism. It closes alike the books of Zeno and those of Epicurus. It believes in the grand architect of the universe, in the immortality of the soul, in the necessity of moderating and governing the human passions, to make of them human virtues. This is the substance of our precepts. Upon these bases, the Supreme Council desires to erect that luminous temple to which the wise of every country and of all religions may repair. But to effect that, we must be convinced that no efforts are insignificant and no aid is unimportant. We're all fractions of the great social unit. We all play a part, more or less brilliant, more or less active, but always certain and always real in this world. An edifice is not composed of great ashlars alone. There are materials of secondary appearance which assist in producing its symmetry, its solidity, and even its beauty. With us too, nothing is without its use. It is necessary that every brother should be a Mason, not only in the lodge, but in the world. That he should preach as well by his example as with his lips. That he should cultivate wisdom, practice fraternity in its fullest sense, respect justice, and cause it to be respected. And then, whether he be an humble workman among the masses, or one who sits in the councils of kings, he will worthily have accomplished his task. Thus acting, we shall show that Masonry contains those fruitful germs that it is for the interest of every prince and of every country to seek to develop. When the founders of our order exiled politics from our temples, they were far from meaning that we ought to exercise no influence upon society. But they desired that this influence should be pure, severe, and moral. They fixed the seat of our power beyond the storms of the outer world, at the domestic hearth. They commanded us to make the man and the family better. For they knew that the power that forms habits and morals dictates laws. They did not conceal it from themselves, that many generations must pass away before the object would be attained. They knew the weaknesses also of the human heart. They knew that the children of the grand architect would wish to create like him with a word and gesture without the aid of time, which alone makes fruitful and ripens haughty and unavailing desire. Let us have aims more moderate. Let us learn to be patient, to be not discouraged, not to repine if we do not see the work crowned with success before we close our eyes upon this world. What is a single moment in eternity? And because the leaf drops upon the root, does the tree therefore cease to grow? Let us again and again turn the furrows plowed by our fathers, and the field will not become a field of tares. At the same feast, the brother, Philippe Dupin, said, "At Rome, the child who, born to patrician rank, was destined to the perilous honors of the conduct of public affairs, seeing in the atrium only the statues of his ancestors, their foreheads cinctured with triumphal coronets, was, as it were, reared under their eyes, and urged by their inspiring presence, he naturally rose to their level. At least he endeavored to do so, in the same thought that antique adage of our fathers had its origin, noblesse oblige." So, my brethren, while we study history and contemplate the glorious past of those who lived and fought under our banners, let us too be nobly proud and say, Masonry oblige, yes, Masonry is obligation, for it has been the forerunner of civilization. In its proscribed temples, all the truths have found sometimes a cradle and sometimes a refuge. And when the world was vexed with savage virtues and stupid superstitions, it purified beliefs, it raised altars to toleration, to pity, to justice, to all those holy images that now gave light to the world. Masonry oblige, for when intolerance furiously preached the worship of gods made by the hands of men, it was in corporations, in secret societies, in Masonic societies that by the title of Grand Architect of the Universe, a god was proclaimed creator, preserver, and supreme judge of the human race. It was there that men learned to defend the great principles of liberty of conscience and free thought, that is to say, the doctrine of improvement and progress in relation both to the intellect and the heart, to intelligence and virtue. For that doctrine our fathers fought. The struggle was fierce, sanguinary, glorious. You have your heroes, sages, martyrs. You possess the immense glory of having triumphed for the happiness of all. But now, when the hand of intolerance is no longer armed with the steel, when your temples have august protectors and society walks in your paths, are you to conclude that Masonry has lived its time, accomplished its task, and may rest from its labors? Are we now to seek in indolent repose the reward of our toils? That would be to mistake at once the object of the institution, the condition of society, and the demands of the generous mission to which we have devoted ourselves. When the despotism of blind superstition was tyrant over the world, Masonry, naked of material power, ruled and reigned in the domain of ideas, protested for the present, and sought to enlighten the future. Now, in the elevated sphere it occupies, it should still reign and rule to complete its work, perhaps by a different course. Thus, men's beliefs are no longer rude and savage, and Masonry does not need to soften and combat them. But now that creeds have become enfeebled and emasculated by the mere effect of civilization, is it not the noble duty of Masonry to endeavor to give them new life and vigor, and to develop what in them is true, consolatory, just, useful, and venerable? You have heretofore set limits to all excesses, and you ought to do so again. You should maintain order in institutions, among men, in ideas, and precisely because you have heretofore warred against excesses and errors that were to be deplored, it is now your mission to war against excesses and errors in the opposite direction. You profess as the basis of your doctrine the law of equality, of fraternity among men, of liberty for all. But you ought also to teach all men the true meaning and representative value of those words, which may enlighten and instruct, but may also lead astray and bewilder. For you, by your studies and by the practical life of your lodges, have learned what they mean and what they command. To you, as to all men of progress, the word equality means equality as of right, for equal virtues and equal capacities, a share in the same advantages, for those who, by equal titles, deserve them. To understand it in any other sense is contrary to the principles of morality and justice, and to the teachings of nature herself. Does it not belong to you who have always been the defenders of liberty, to declare the austere duties which it imposes on all, and to demonstrate that it can have no solid basis unless it be built upon virtue and respect of the rights of others? Does not the voice of Masonry still need to incite to fraternal union all men and every people? That is its mission. It embraces the two hemispheres in the vast circle of fraternal beneficence. For your sphere of action is not narrowed and limited by the frontiers of this realm. Masonry is of all countries as she is of all times. As long ago as 1741, the Grand Master, the Duc d'Antin, said, "The whole world is only one republic, of which every nation is a family and every individual a child." The sublime art of Masonry, without interfering with the different duties which the diversity of states exact, tends to create a new people which, made up from many nations, cements them all, as it were, together by the cohesive power of science, morality, and virtue. Time has enabled us to improve but little upon this definition. The answer to the inquiry, what Masonry is, would be very incomplete if nothing was said of its philosophy. And yet I have time to say but little. Masonry is as little a religious sect as it is a political party. As it embraces all parties, so it embraces all sects, to form from among them all a vast fraternal association. The morals of antiquity, of the law of Moses, and of Christianity are ours. We recognize every teacher of morality, every reformer, as a brother. No one Mason has the right to measure for an other within the walls of a Masonic Temple the degree of veneration which he shall feel for any reformer or the founder of any religion. We teach a belief in no particular creed as we teach unbelief in none. In all religions there is a basis of truth. In all there are fragments at least of pure morality. All that teach the cardinal tenets of Masonry we respect. All teachers and reformers of mankind we admire and revere. We do not undervalue the importance of any truth. We utter no word that can be deemed irreverent by any one of any faith. We do not tell the Muslim that it is only important for him to believe that there is but one God, and wholly unessential whether Muhammad was his prophet. We do not tell the Hebrew that the Messiah whom he expects was born in Bethlehem nearly 2,000 years ago. and substituted a better faith in the place of the law of Moses. And as little do we tell the sincere Christian that Jesus of Nazareth was but a man like us, or his history but the unreal revival of an older legend. To do either is beyond our jurisdiction. Masonry of no one age belongs to all time. Of no one religion it finds its great truths in all. It is not disbelief, nor skepticism. It has its own creed, simple and sublime, to which every good man of every religion can assent. It expounds all the old philosophies and modestly and not oracularly utters its own. To every Mason there is a God, one supreme, infinite in goodness, in wisdom, foresight, justice and benevolence, creator, disposer and preserver of all things. How or by what intermediates, powers or emanations he creates and acts, and in what way he unfolds and manifests himself, Masonry leaves to creeds and religions to inquire. To every Mason the soul of man is immortal. Whether it emanated from and will return to God, and what is to be its continued mode of existence hereafter, each judges for himself. Masonry was not made to settle that. To every Mason, wisdom or intelligence, force or strength and harmony or fitness, proportion and beauty are the trinity of the attributes of God. With the subtleties of philosophy and scholasticism concerning them, Masonry does not meddle nor decide as to the reality of the supposed existences that are their personifications, nor whether the Christian's Trinity be such a personification or a reality of the gravest import and significance. To every Mason, the infinite justice and benevolence of God give ample assurance that evil will ultimately be dethroned, and the good, the true and the beautiful reign triumphant and eternal. It teaches that evil and pain and sorrow exist as parts of a wise and beneficent plan, all the parts of which work together under God's eye to a result which will be perfection. Whether the existence of evil is rightly explained in this creed or in that, by Typhon the great serpent, by Ahriman and his army of wicked spirits, by the giants and titans warring against heaven, by the two coexistent, co-eternal principles of good and evil, by Satan's temptation and the fall of man, it is beyond the domain of Masonry to decide, and it does not even inquire. Nor is it within its province to determine how the ultimate triumph of light and truth and good over darkness and error and evil is to be achieved. Thus, it disbelieves no truth and teaches unbelief in no creed, except so far as such creed may lower its own lofty estimate of the deity, degrade him to the level of the passions of humanity, deny the high destiny of man, impugn God's goodness and infinite benevolence, strike at the great columns of Masonry, charity, hope and faith, or inculcate immorality and disregard of the active duties of life. It is not a religion but a worship, and one in which all civilized men can unite. For it does not undertake to explain or dogmatically to settle those great mysteries that are above the feeble comprehension of our human intellect. It trusts in God and hopes. It believes like a child and is humble. It draws no sword to compel others to adopt its belief or be happy with its hopes. And it waits with patience to understand the mysteries of nature and nature's God hereafter. The first great truth in Masonry is, no man hath seen God at any time. He is one, eternal, all-powerful, all-wise, infinitely just, merciful, benevolent and compassionate, creator and preserver of all things, the source of light and life, coextensive with time and space, eternal as one and infinite as the other, who thought and with the thought created the universe and all living things and the souls of men, that which is the permanent, while everything besides him is a perpetual genesis. That his justice, wisdom and mercy are alike infinite, alike perfect, and yet do not in the least jar or conflict one with the other. While the first oaks still put forth their leaves, man lost the perfect knowledge of the one true God, the ancient absolute existence, the infinite mind and supreme intelligence, and floated helplessly out upon the shoreless ocean of conjecture. Then the intellect vexed and tortured itself with seeking to learn whether the material universe was a mere chance combination of atoms or the work of infinite uncreated wisdom. Whether everything material and spiritual was created by the deity out of nothing, or whether matter and he were coexistent and creation only the molding into shape of chaos. Whether the universe was God, or God was the soul of the universe pervading every part of it, or an independent existence separate and apart from the universe, a personal existence. Whether with ever-present and ever-recurring immediate personal action, he produces the continual succession of phenomena and effects, or whether those effects are but the results of an unchangeable law enacted by him in the remote ages of eternity. All their philosophies, struggle as they might to avoid the perilous abyss, ended in one of the two conclusions, either that there is no God, or that all that exists is God, in theoretical atheism or pantheism. And so they wandered ever deeper into the darkness and were lost. And there was for them no longer any real God, but only a great dumb universe. Atheism, it is true, never was more than a theory. It has been said, a great thinker writes, death is the end. This is a world without a God. There is no providence. Nature is a fortuitous concourse of atoms. Thought is a fortuitous function of matter, a fortuitous result of a fortuitous result, a chance shot from the great wind gun of the universe, accidentally loaded, pointed at random and shot off by chance. Things happen, they are not arranged. There is luck and there is ill luck, but there is no providence. There is only a universe all disorder, no infinite, no reason, no conscience, no heart, no soul of things, nothing to reverence, to esteem, to love, to worship, to trust in, but only an ugly force, alien and foreign to us, that strikes down those we love and makes us mere worms on the hot sand of the world. Out of the sky smiles no kind providence in all its thousand starry eyes, and in storms a malignant violence with its lightning sword stabs into the darkness, seeking for men to murder. Man never could be content with that, to believe that there was no mind that thought for man, no conscience to enact eternal laws, no heart to love those whom nothing of earth loves or cares for, no will of the universe to marshal the nations in the way of justice, wisdom and love. History is not the fortuitous concourse of events, or nature that of atoms. He cannot believe that there is no plan nor purpose in nature to guide our going out or coming in, that there is a mighty going, but it goes nowhere, that all beauty, wisdom, affection, justice and morality in the world is an accident and may end tomorrow. All that is well and truly said. Masonry admits its truth and not only requires of the aspirant within its temples to profess a belief in the existence of a God, but before he is made a Mason, to unite in prayer to him and declare that in him he puts his trust. With that it is for the time content, but afterwards it endeavors to communicate to him adequate and rational ideas of the grand architect of the universe, that honor the deity and are not idolatry. Most truly it was said, it is not profanity to deny the deity of the ignorant vulgar, but to assign to him the attributes imagined by them is profanity. Most truly it has been said, verily, verily, travelers have seen many monstrous idols in many countries, but no human eyes have ever beheld more daring, gross and shocking images of the divine nature than we creatures of the dust make in our own likenesses, of our own bad passions, impiously reversing the order of creation, and breathing our own spirit into a mental image and idol of the Creator. So it has been truly said by another, that every religion and every conception of God is idolatrous, insofar as it is imperfect, and as it substitutes a feeble and temporary idea in the shrine of that undiscoverable being, who can be known only in part, and who can therefore be honored, even by the most enlightened among his worshippers, only in proportion to their limited powers of understanding and imagining to themselves his perfections. No symbol of deity can be appropriate or durable except in a relative or moral sense. We cannot exalt words that have only a sensuous meaning above sense. To call him a power or a force or an intelligence is merely to deceive ourselves into the belief that we use words that have a meaning to us, while really they have no more than the ancient visible symbols had. To call him Sovereign Father, Grand Architect of heaven and earth, extension, time, beginning, middle and end, whose a face is turned on all sides, the source of life and death, is but to hold out to other men certain mental symbols by which we in vain endeavor to communicate to them the same vague ideas which men in all ages have impotently struggled to express. And it may be doubted whether we have succeeded either in communicating or in forming in our own minds any more distinct and definite and true and adequate ideas of the deity in any other than his moral aspect, with all our metaphysical conceits and logical subtleties, than the rude ancients did, who endeavored to symbolize and so to express his attributes by the fire, the light, the sun and stars, the lotus and the scarabaeus, all of them types of what, except by types more or less sufficient, could not and cannot be expressed at all. The heathen gods were unrealities and mere ideal personifications either of their heavenly bodies, the powers of nature, or the principles of light and darkness, good and evil. The ancients worshipped the powers of nature in the constellation, and the constellations in the animals imaged there. But always there were a few who believed that there was but one only true God, who has no bodily shape, and hath never been seen by any man, who is not the light nor the fire, but pure absolute intellect and existence, a personality existing before the universe, which he created with a thought, that the past, the present and the illimitable future, the infinite series of events and successions of time in both directions, are all present to him at one and the same moment. There is to him no future and no past. He is present everywhere, and there is to him neither there nor elsewhere, but everything to him is here and now, that he is necessarily unchangeable, immutable, infinitely just, wise and powerful, yet infinitely merciful, loving and benevolent, and can neither be angry nor repent. And so Masonry says to its initiates this: God is one, unapproachable, single, eternal and unchanging, and not that supposed God of nature whose manifold power was imagined to be immediately revealed to the senses in the incessant round of movement, life and death. The manifold is an infinite illustration of the one. The forces of nature are the laws enacted by the absolute uncreated existence. In the absence of creation by him, no attribute could have been appended to his name. By the emanations of his omnipotence, we become conscious of his abstract being, and the Elohim by which he created all that is are his creative powers and a part of those emanations. All the gods of the heathen are false idols, because being but men's attributes and passions enlarged and personified, they are wholly unreal and have no existence. There is but one God, infinite and incomprehensible, to whom no human attribute can be properly assigned, even when imagined to be infinite. The powers of God are not persons nor beings distinct from him, but his thoughts, immaterial as our thoughts and existing in him as thoughts exist in our own souls. God is the soul of the universe, distinct from and superior to the universe of things, as the soul of man is distinct from and superior to his frail body. There is no rival God ever at war with the ineffable, nor any independent and self-existent evil principle in rebellion against him. The universe is a great whole, in which everything tends to a good result through an infinite series of things, like a great harmony in which discords and concords mingle, and which without either would be imperfect. Man, his intellect too limited to comprehend these mysteries, must believe, and simple faith is wiser than all the vain speculations of philosophy. Let him steer far away from all those vain philosophies that endeavor to account for all that is, without admitting that there is a God separate and apart from the universe, which is his work, that erect universal nature into a God and worship it alone, that annihilate spirit, and believe no testimony except that of the bodily senses, that by logical formulas and dexterous collocation of words make the actual, living, guiding and protecting God fade into the dim mistiness of a mere abstraction and unreality, itself a mere logical formula. In all ages, the golden threads of truth have gleamed in the woof of error. Fortunate the Mason who, by the light of wisdom, the true Masonic light, first emanation from the deity, can discern the golden threads, God's hieroglyphics written when time began, and read them aright as they were read by our ancient brethren in the early ages. Thus in all ages the word of God, his thought, the great creative power, not spoken through material organs nor in a voice audible to mortal ears, has sounded in the souls of men and taught them the great truths of reason, philosophy and religion. Fortunate the Mason to whom that word, the deity manifest, is audible, intelligible, significant, God's thought that made the stars and all that is, and the great laws of harmony and motion. In all ages, rosy gleams of light, tinging the dark clouds of error, have taught mankind that truth and light, perfect and glorious, linger below the horizon of mortal vision, in time to rise like the sun, and fill God's universe with light and glory at the dawn of his appointed day. Fortunate the Mason who with firm faith and hope accepts these struggling rays that gild the clouds as ample evidence that in God's good time his dawn of day will come and be eternal. The existence of a God who is the immaterial soul of the universe, present in it everywhere and yet wholly distinct from it, is a mystery beyond our comprehension. But no more so than the existence of the soul of man, the advent of light to the earth from the remotest stars after journeying many thousand years, the presence of latent electricity and heat in the most solid bodies, and the existence of a soulless universe without a God and uncreated by a God would be a greater mystery and more incomprehensible still. The idea that God never began to exist but always was is one beyond our comprehension and which the soul struggles in vain to grasp, but not more so than the idea of space infinite in extent and time infinite in duration. And it would be a far greater mystery if after an eternity during which there had been no God, during which there had been everywhere in infinite space blank nothingness, never during a whole eternity of time an echo of a thought, God without a cause had begun to be, that the thought and will of God uttered in the Word are an infinite omnipotent power of creation and production, of preservation and destruction that brought into existence out of nothingness the whole infinite universe of worlds, is a mystery, the greatest of all mysteries. We are in the habit of thinking, but it is as comprehensible as the existence of a soul, of a thought that can separate itself from and go out of the soul, that can live after the utterer is dead, that is an actual power and molds the fates and influences the destinies of humanity. And it would be a greater mystery still if the material universe, not instinct with a soul nor having a creator, and without a producing cause, had existed always or had sprung into existence itself. The action of the will of one man on the conduct of another, the unknown, invisible, immaterial power that draws the magnet round with irresistible energy to the north. The development of the acorn into the oak, the phenomena of dreams, are equally mysteries and equally incomprehensible to us. God is a mystery only as everything that surrounds us is. And as we are mysteries to ourselves, God lives and is immortal. His thought that created preserves. It conducts and controls the universe, all spheres, all words, all actions of mankind and of every animate and inanimate creature. It speaks in the soul of every man that lives, the stars, the earth, the trees, the winds, the universal voice of nature, tempest and avalanche, the sea's roar and the grave voice of the waterfall, the hoarse thunder and the soft whisper of the brook, the ice mountains sailing in northern seas, the song of birds, the voices of love, the speech of men, all are the alphabet in which it communicates itself to men and informs them of the will and law of God, who made and blesses all. Before the world grew old, the primitive truth and knowledge faded out of men's minds. Then man asked himself, what am I, and how and whence am I, and whither do I go? And the soul, looking inward upon itself, endeavored to learn whether that I, that was conscious of its own individuality and identity, were mere matter, its thought, reason, passions and affections mere results of material combination, or whether it were an immaterial existence enveloped in and environed by the impediments of matter, whether it were an individual essence, complete and perfect by itself with a separate and inherently immortal life, or an infinitesimal portion of a great first principle or universal soul that interpenetrates the universe, extends through the infinitudes of space, and undulates like light and heat. And so they wandered further and further on amid the mazes of error, and imagined vain philosophies, wallowing in the sloughs of materialism and sensualism, or vainly beating their wings in the vacuum of abstractions and idealities. But Masonry teaches us that the soul of man is immortal, not the mere result of organization, nor an aggregate of modes of action of matter, not a mere succession of phenomena and perceptions, but an existence, one and identical, a living spirit, a spark from the great central light that hath entered into and dwells in the body, to be separated from it at death and returned to God who gave it. That does not disperse or vanish at death like breath or a smoke, nor can be annihilated, but still exists and possesses activity and intelligence, even as it existed in God before it was enveloped in the body. It is immortal, not of necessity, but unless as it and all things emanated from God, it pleases him to absorb it again into himself. We do not understand this, but we believe. We struggle to express the truth by words that are inadequate. Far in the darkened past, we hear our ancient brethren, with stammering utterance, striving to express the same idea of immortality, saying, "The seed dies, and out of its death springs the young shoot of the new wheat to produce 100-fold. The worm dies in its narrow prison house, woven by itself, and out of its death springs the brilliant moth, emblem of immortality. The long-lived serpent dies and self-renews its own existence, and out of the death of night's sleep, the minor mystery, comes the renewed life of the morning. Now as ever, out of death springs life, out of darkness ever awakes the light, and to evil in eternal circle, good succeeds." It is the great problem of human existence whether the power and principle of good is ultimately to dethrone and destroy the power and principle of evil, whether pain and calamity and sin and sorrow are hereafter to disappear from the universe and all thenceforward be light and joy and content and happiness, whether there is another life in which the malign influences of the demon of evil will be unfelt, and where reparation will be made for the sufferings of virtue and the calamities of the good in this life. For it is the great problem whether we are better than the brutes that perish, and whether there is a great, good, beneficent Father in heaven, who will in his own good time connect together all the 1,000 links of circumstance, and make them lead to one good and excellent result. The laws which control and regulate the universe are those of movement and harmony. We see only the isolated incidents of things and cannot, with our feeble and limited capacity and vision, discern their connection, nor the mighty chords that make the apparent discord perfect harmony. Evil is merely apparent, and all is in reality good and perfect. For pain and sorrow, persecution and calamity, affliction and destitution, sickness and death are but the means by which alone the noblest virtues can be developed. Without them, and without error and sin and injury and outrage, as there can be no effect without an adequate cause, there could be neither patience, nor prudence, nor temperance, nor courage to meet danger, nor truth when to speak it is hazardous, nor love that lives despite ingratitude, nor charity, nor forbearance and forgiveness, nor toleration, nor charitable judgment of men's motives and actions, nor patriotism, nor heroism, nor self-denial, nor generosity. Human virtues and excellencies would have no existence, their very names be unknown, their natures be entirely incomprehensible to us. Life would be one low, flat, dead level above which none of the lofty elements of human nature would emerge, and man would lie lapped in contented indolence and apathetic idleness, a mere worthless negative instead of the brave, strong soldier against the grim legions of evil and of rude difficulty. The laws of nature are the development of love, the universal law, the divine motive for creation. Hence flow attraction and affinities and the swift flash of the electric current, the tides, the clouds, the movements of the world, the influence of will and the mysterious power of magnetism. Nature is one great harmony, and of that harmony every human soul is a tone. From God it flows in never-ceasing circles as light and splendor from his sun. To him the notes of that harmony return and mingle with the mighty diapason of the spheres and are immortal. Man is not governed by a resistless blind fate or inexorable dumb destiny, but is free to choose between the evil and the good. We are conscious of our freedom to act as we are conscious of our existence and continuing identity. We have the same evidence of one as of the other. If we can put one in doubt, we have no certainty of either, and everything is unreal, and we can deny our free will and free agency only upon the ground that they are in the nature of things impossible, which would be to deny the omnipotence of God. The mysteries of the great universe of God, how can we with our limited mental vision expect to grasp and comprehend them? Infinite space stretching out from us every way without limit, infinite time without beginning or end, and we here and now in the center of each, an infinity of suns, the nearest of which only diminish in size, viewed with the most powerful telescope, each with its retinue of worlds, some that we seem to see, whose light that now reaches our eyes has been upon its journey for 50 centuries. Our world spinning upon its axis and rushing ever in its circuit round the sun, and it with the sun and all our special system revolving round some great central point, and that and suns, stars and worlds evermore flashing onward with inconceivable rapidity through illimitable space. And then, in every drop of water that we drink, incredible multitudes of living creatures, invisible to the naked eye, of a minuteness beyond belief, yet organized, living, feeding, devouring each the other, no doubt with consciousness of identity and memory and instinct. Such are the mysteries of the great universe of God, and yet we would fain know by what process He created it, would understand His powers, His attributes, His emanations, His mode of existence and action, the plan according to which all events proceed, that plan profound as God Himself, would know the laws by which He controls the universe, would fain see and talk to Him face to face, and are unwilling to believe what we do not understand. He commands us to love one another, to become like little children. He tells us that to love Him and to love our neighbor are the great commandments, obeying which we shall live, and we dispute and wrangle and hate and persecute each other, because we cannot all be of one opinion as to His essence, or agree upon a complete inventory of His attributes, or believe that this doctrine or that is heresy or truth, drenching the world with blood, depopulating realms, and turning fertile lands into deserts for the glory of God and to vindicate the truth, until, for religious wars, persecutions and murders, the earth for many a century has rolled round the sun, a charnel house, steaming and reeking with human gore, the blood of brother slain by brother for opinion's sake, that has soaked into and polluted all her veins and made her a horror to her sisters of the universe. And if all men had always obeyed with all their heart the mild and gentle teachings of Masonry, that world would always have been a paradise, while intolerance and persecution make of it a hell. For this is the Masonic creed: believe in God's infinite benevolence, wisdom, and justice. Hope for the final triumph of good over evil, and for perfect harmony as the final result of all the concords and discords of the universe. And be charitable as God is towards the unfaith, the errors, the follies, and the faults of men, for all are one great brotherhood. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.